Hi everyone, welcome back to Splash Page. Last night, episode 5 of How I Met Your Father season 1 aired, entitled The Good Mom. In this episode, we explore more of Sophie's relationship with her mother, who is a character that has been referenced in, I believe, all of the episodes so far, and we get a rather early introduction to her. The episode revolves around Sophie and her mother and how she learns that her checkered past isn't because her mother continually picks the wrong guys, but rather her mother's issues are what lead to the turmoil in her life. Sophie's mother was a model in her younger days and was known to bounce around from man to man, always uprooting and forcing the family to move. Sophie feels that because of these moves that she really struggled to create friends and lasting relationships, and probably looks back at her mother and her failures in love as one of the reasons why she struggles so mightily to find a partner. In the episode, there aren't so many references back to How I Met Your Mother. The handful that I caught. In this scene, they referenced that Sophie's mother had a relationship with Woody Harrelson. Originally, I thought she said Woody Allen, and I was like, wow, that really aged poorly, but there was a Woody Allen joke in How I Met Your Mother about you're not a true New Yorker until you've seen Woody Allen in New York City in the episode Subway Wars. But again, it wasn't Woody Allen, it was Woody Harrelson mentioned here. Sid also calls out in his Bloody Marys that he wants the team to try, that there are too few olives in them. I am sure this is not a reference to the olive theory, but it was something that called to me as potential reference. They also have a call out when Sophie's introduced to her mother's new boyfriend, who happens to be a very young artist and almost her age. She refers to him as teenage stepdad, which both Valentina and Sophie laugh about and say that would make a great Nickelodeon show, which is probably a call out to the character Drew and how that actor got his start on a Nickelodeon show. The three different plot elements of this episode are Sophie, Valentina, and Sophie's mom, and Sophie finally letting go of the fact that her mother has been kind of dealt a bad hand of cards in life and rather is the cause of a lot of her issues, resulting in Sophie actually denying her mother the opportunity to talk further about what's going on in her life because Sophie felt that she's put so much on hold for her mother that she needs to kind of focus on herself. The B storyline, I would say, is between Sid, Charlie, and Jesse, where Charlie, who is looking for his purpose in life, decides that he wants to try to help people as he has had a ton of therapy in his life. And he takes Jesse and Sid under his wing. Jesse's issue was obviously the proposal fail he had, and they were going to that same bar, the Happy Idiot, which Jesse was very resistant to at first, but then working through with Charlie actually had the confidence to go onto stage where his proposal fail happened, and while he took a little bit of heckling, essentially said, you know what, I feel better. I'm not gonna need to sing or do anything else. Thank you, Charlie. Sid's is a bit more fun, as he is very awkward around Sophie's mother when first introduced, and it turns out because Sophie's mother was a model that he masturbated to. And this caused a very traumatic experience where he accidentally killed his hamster, Slim Shady. Overall, Charlie helps him get over his fear or his hang-up just simply by talking to Sophie's mother and buying her a drink. And then finally, the C plot was with Ellen. Ellen is making a BLT sandwich and realizes that her tomato has gone rotten. Also, I thought very strange in Charlie and Ellen's apartment, the TV and the couch aren't facing each other. So that probably leads to a lot of awkward viewing experiences, but I'll put that aside for now. Ellen goes across the hall, sees that there is a wake / people sitting Shiva for an elderly Jewish neighbor who has passed away. She sees a plate of tomatoes, runs in, tries to grab some, and meets a woman that she's interested in. I believe her name was Rachel. She lies about knowing the elderly neighbor to get on Rachel's good side. Charlie, who has met the neighbors because he doesn't have a job right now and is just looking for stuff to do, mistakes one neighbor for another, one that didn't have any grandchildren, and therefore Ellen comes clean about her not knowing Rachel's grandmother and accusing Rachel of taking advantage of the elderly when really it was just a mix-up on Charlie's part. I think overall the show is in a tricky spot from the sense that it's enjoyable, it gets a few laughs, but really it's dealing with three things that are pretty significant and kind of an uphill battle that I'm curious to see how the show is going to handle it. First, the expectations. They are using a very, very well known and loved IP, and that's going to make it impossible to avoid comparisons and have it start with extremely high expectations. The showrunners and Hulu obviously knew this and still greenlit this story, so they must have a pretty confident feeling and some faith in the show. The second is that the cast of How I Met Your Mother included 5 principals, and this show, How I Met Your Father, has 6. And that just means that, when you're doing it in the same confines as a 22 to 25 minute episode, that you're spending less time on your A and B storylines, and usually including a C plot. So the writers have to really jam things in and make sure things happen quickly. The episodes do feel rushed. In particular, this last episode, I would have loved to see some more time with Sophie's mother and kind of get to know her a bit more before seeing this kind of disappointment in the fact that she's almost sabotaging herself. They also started this show with basically needing to introduce us to the whole group as well as introduce the whole group to themselves. We know that Jesse and Sid were best friends / roommates, and that Sophia and Valentina were the same. But other than that, those two groups needed to meet each other, and then Ellen with kind of her estranged relationship with her brother Jesse, as well as Charlie being new characters. We don't have much of a starting point of understanding who this friend group is. If you think about the way that How I Met Your Mother did it or Friends did it, we really come into a group that's already a very tight-knit group, and we kind of have one character that is the audience that is now being introduced to this group, being Rachel in Friends as well as Robin in How I Met Your Mother. And I think that kind of solidified ground to start on really helped the other two shows, and I think we're kind of missing that existing relationship feel and inside jokes and already knowing how each other work. Go back and watch How I Met Your Mother, the first episode, and you'll really get a feel for things like Suit Up and The Olive Theory and other pieces that you could tell have already been established within this friend group that we're being introduced to through the eyes of Robin. And finally, this season's only going to be 10 episodes. When you look at How I Met Your Mother, I think the fewest episodes in a season was 20, and it was typically 24 episodes. That's just how sitcoms were run on network TV. Obviously, with streaming and the 10-episode story arc has just become more popular and is really the wave of the future and how things are going to be done. With this show being more episodic rather than being serialized, even though there are some larger overarching storylines that go throughout this season, I think it's really going to struggle to be able to captivate an audience that is very much engaged in all of the characters and all of their storylines. One thing to call out in How I Met Your Mother, that final episode of the first season was an absolute doozy. In the finale alone, Ted and Robin finally get together. And also, more heart-wrenching and more important, we see that Marshall and Lily actually break up and Lily leaves to go to San Francisco. It felt like it was a huge relationship breaking up, and I don't think we have one like that. You could argue that Sid and Hannah are obviously a very serious couple. However, we don't have much time with Hannah, so I don't think even a breakup of that relationship would leave to have the same gravitas as what Marshall and Lily went through. So let me know what your thoughts are so far on How I Met Your Father, and do you think they'll be able to overcome the 3 things I just called out? Well, thanks, that's it for me. Take it easy, YouTube.